You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 383, Avoiding Scams, Wire Fraud, and Cyber Attacks with Jeremiah Baker. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profit, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I want you to stay tuned because you could be the victim of scams, wire fraud, and cyber attacks. I do not want you to be the person that says, not me, and keeping your head in the sand. The truth is that these scams, frauds, and cyber attacks are on the rise. And I have personally had clients who have been victim to scams and wire fraud. And I have personally been the victim of fraud as well, but in my personal life. These things are happening every single day. So let's listen to Jeremiah Baker because he is the expert and he's going to share with us some practical tips that we can implement to keep ourselves safer and be on the outlook for these possible scams, fraud, and cyber attacks. Look, you work really, really hard to build your successful business. You work hard to make a profit, so let's keep that profit. Jeremiah Baker is a cybersecurity expert, keynote speaker, and member of the Stanford University Board of Advisors Global Projects Center. He has also guest lectured at universities and is the author of Confessions of a Hacker. Jeremiah works with high-net-worth families and businesses, helping them protect themselves against cybercrime. And today, he is going to be sharing some real-life stories of business owners just like you, as well as practical tips that you can implement immediately to start protecting yourself. Before we dive in, I want to invite you to take my Next Level Business Owner quiz. If you have not already done so, I want you to hit pause right now, take 3 minutes, head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz and find out what is most holding you back from taking your business to the next level. Once you find out what's most holding you back, you will get a personalized curated playlist with specific episodes that address those challenges. What is more productive and effective than identifying your main challenge and addressing those challenges with actionable strategies you can implement in your business right away? So be sure to head on over and take that quiz, 3 short minutes, amberdelagarza.com/quiz. And now let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to the podcast, Jeremiah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Amber. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we were just getting to know each other just a few minutes before hitting record. And, I am really looking forward to this conversation. And I don't take that lightly. I don't know that many people get really, really excited about, cybersecurity. But this has hit home personally in my life with my husband. It has hit home with clients. And I think our listeners are, going to be able to take away some actionable steps to protect themselves. And that's what we're looking for.
Great. Thank you, Amber. Yeah, happy to help.
Yes. All right. So, Jeremiah, you wrote a book called Confessions of a Hacker. Can you share with us a little bit about what that is and why did you write that book?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for asking. So I wrote the book because I spent the last 17 years in cybersecurity, particularly providing a service called ethical hacking, pen testing, penetration testing. And the concept is corporations all over the world will hire an organization to essentially hack them before the bad guys do it so that they can find all the weaknesses in their security posture and then repair those findings, and then have a firm like ours come back and retest and make sure that we can't get back in the same fashion and or any new methods. And
Yeah.
really, it's to create a better defense. And then there are some compliance-based industries that require this, like PCI, which is folks that are accepting credit cards and things like this. HIPAA in the healthcare space, it's a requirement to get your HIPAA compliance and so forth. And then just as a general good measure, most companies do this at least once a year, if not once a quarter. And in that time, my role has really been growing the business. I started as a partner to grow the company to help get clients. And we've worked with people all over the world, including banks and major casinos, hospitals, government organizations, universities, software companies, all over the planet. And in that time, I noticed a pattern. I was getting, after a few years, I started to see the same types of attacks happening successfully, even though they're relatively easy to prevent these attacks. And I mean attacks that aren't like what we see in the movies with someone wearing like a hooded sweatshirt and they're on a keyboard and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It was just what I would consider kind of traditional scams, social engineering, tricking people. And I thought, well, what I'm noticing when talking to people is that they didn't know these type of crimes and or attacks were happening until it happened to them.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to say, well, I really need to put this into, initially it was put into a keynote presentation, a speaking engagement called Confessions of a Hacker. Over the years, all these stories kept stacking up, and some new ones with the advent of AI and different attack methods, but kind of the same attacks happening over and over. And I wanted to have a way for folks to be able to at least know how hackers and cyber criminals are attacking, and then how to prevent them from happening to themselves. And I thought story format would be the best way to do that. Of course, removing any names, company names, anything that's
Yeah.
kind of personal, and just making it generic. And that's what triggered me to write the book. I felt it was kind of an obligation to help other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're gonna share some of those stories with us today. And your
Yes.
examples that you gave, and maybe some of the
Mhm.
stories that you're giving, are of big corporations and companies. But us as
Sure.
small business owners, they're coming after us too. And we
Yes.
might even be an easier target. And just because they're not able to get the same dollar amount doesn't mean that it can take a dollar amount that could clear you out. It could close your business, right?
Right. Yeah,
And
that's true.
so I'm assuming if they're doing these large corporations, $50,000 probably isn't that big of a scam. But in a business or a small business, that could be
Mhm.
your employee's salary. It could be the savings. It could be a nest egg. It could be your
Yeah.
client's money for services that are still not
Mhm.
provided. And that could be very detrimental to
That's
your
right.
business.
Yeah, I mean, we're technically, I mean, if it's the Small Business Administration's definition of a small business, is it's actually, we fit in that as well. And
Right?
yeah, everyone's a target. I read recently that somewhere in the range of 60% of small businesses go out of business within a given period of time,
Mhm.
post a major attack and or breach like this. Because I know as a small business owner, there's not usually a lot of margin or a lot of room for something like this. And it's hard enough to run the business, to get clients, keep them happy, keep everything profitable, keep the machine running. Then you have someone come in and essentially extract a large portion of that money, and or do things like disrupt the business. So
Yeah.
doing things where it brings down the business to a ransomware attack or a denial of service attack, where it's kind of going after your website and your systems, and you can't take orders, you can't do normal business operations. It could be an assortment of things, not just money loss, right? It could be your reputation, things like that as well. So yeah, we're all susceptible. And to your point, Amber, yeah, small businesses, we don't have a lot of room to recover from these
Right.
type of attacks.
So we want to make sure that we are being preventative, and that we
Yes.
are educating our team members, and that we are keeping it at the forefront. I'm sure you have
Mhm.
a lot of great strategies, but I'm going to start off with my own strategy. Don't keep telling yourself it's not going to happen to you. Like,
Wonderful point.
that naiveness, right? Is it's not going to happen. I have other things to worry about. It will happen. And I'm going to share
Yeah.
some of the stories. I had a client, this was hugely, you know, we'll get to the story, but I remember when it
Mhm.
happened, she was like thank goodness I'm in year 15 of my business. Had this happened in the first 5 years of my business, I would have been out of business with this scam. My husband,
horrible.
his whole identity was taken over. And that was our first entry into how shocking and how easy it is for somebody to do these types of things. And so again, if you're not protected, this could be the thing that just wipes you out. All right, so let's jump in. There was a few terms that you shared that I just want to make sure that all of my listeners are on the same page, because I only recently heard some of these terms myself in the last few years. Before we started, I asked you if you were a white hat. Can you share with our listeners what a white hat is? Because look, your book, when I saw it, it's black, it's doom, it's Confessions of a Hacker, and that's what
I will change the colors. Yes, yeah,
but
make
that's
it
what
look
we
less.
tend to think of, right?
Yeah, it's like a scary novel, right? Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, so in the world, when most of us hear hacking, like on TV or in the news, it's considered a very negative thing, right? It's where someone essentially broke in or did something that you don't want them to do. But in the industry we're in, there's an entire service line called ethical hacking, and that's where it's done without malicious intent. It's done to help to be the good guys. So it's really like in a generic example that I like to use is think of it like your home, where you don't know how easy it is to get in through a window or how strong a certain lock is, or can someone trick my garage door opener into opening, and those kind of things. So essentially like a white hat hacking service for a home would be someone that comes around that you've hired to kind of test all the entry points and so forth. And if they can't get in, or if they can get in, they'll find those areas and allow you to say, hey, you might want to reinforce this particular window or door. It's really easy to just pop the lock, with a metal screwdriver or something. It's not as strong as you think it is. And then they go back and reinforce their posture, security posture, and make the repairs to the recommendations that you made. And if we can't get back in, then you get a report saying, hey, you stood up really well to this attack.
Yeah.
And that gives confidence to a lot of folks, like to cyber insurance providers, to compliance, be it like a PCI or HIPAA's in the healthcare space and so forth. And that's really what it is. It's kind of, there used to be a television show like maybe 18, 20, maybe even 20 years ago, where guys would go and break into homes, like former criminals, and then they would show you how they got in. I think it was in the New York area. And that's probably the closest kind of example to what an ethical hacker is, except they're usually doing it to test a network, computer network, and or web applications, or even mobile applications like on our mobile phones.
Yeah. So they're the good guys. They're the guys with the knowledge, the experience, and they're using that knowledge and experience.
Like some serious legal agreements to be able to do this. It's not something that you can just go do.
There's stuff on YouTube. My husband was showing me this stuff of the contracts and everything that you have to think of to get into contract with your clients to ensure that you're doing this ethically and on the good side.
That's incredible. Yeah. And it's good.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, then the other thing that you said, and it was casual, but it was social engineering. Can you share with us what social engineering is?
Yeah, at the end of the day, social engineering it's a fancy phrase for tricking somebody. So you're pretending to be, let's say many of us may have received these calls like, hi, I'm calling from your bank. I need you to give me your username and password. Well, the bank's not going to call you and ask you for that. So that is the bank, someone pretending to be the bank and using their authority and urgency and fear to get you to give information that you do not normally want to give to somebody, especially a bad guy. That's usually that's what social engineering really is at the end of the day. It's someone trying to trick you into giving information, giving money, giving access, let's say, into an office or whatever it may be. That's exactly what social engineering is. It's really old-fashioned trickery.
Right. So we think hacking is like, again, you were saying like, the hoodie on behind the computer, no, faceless. But social engineering is that they're using their personality, that ability to be able to make people like them and feel comfortable. And they're manipulating a situation to get certain information.
That's right. Yeah. And even like certain examples, like putting on like a janitor's outfit, for example, and pushing a broom or a mop in a bucket, and it's got the company logo and hey, can you hold the door for me? And then they come in, but they're not really supposed to be accessing the building, but they look the part.
Right. Right. All right. So let's take this and boil it down to small business owners. What are trends that you have seen with scams and hacking, and just essentially how are people trying to take people's money
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
information,
absolutely.
right? That's the
Yeah,
other part,
money.
is information.
Yeah, money, information, disrupting the business. Well, maybe a good frame for this is to look at it from what the cyber insurance providers are reporting. And I read this recently, very recently, in an article that they published where they said 80% of the incident claims are coming from just three things. So 80% of,
Yeah.
is a large portion, right?
Yeah.
And this matches with what I see from my experience. And this is not some vast report. It's just almost 2 decades of experience of doing this. And those three things start with one, something called business account takeovers. That's generally where someone will take over a bank account, they'll take over your email account, or some account that's very important. And the way that they usually do this is they're able to, either on the dark web, which is like an internet that lives below the internet that most of us use, where usually nefarious bad people hang out and do things. It's been in the news recently with something called the Silk Road. That's kind of all part of this crazy world that lives out there. And a lot of times what will happen, like when we saw Equifax had a breach, a credit bureau, and different people like this, they have our information. That means that information is getting out into the world. Well,
Yep.
if we're doing things like reusing passwords, usernames, whatever, it makes it relatively easy for the bad guys to get this information. Then what they'll do is they'll go to, like, who's the CEO or who's the CFO, someone of power inside of a company, and they'll try to log in. They'll get the credentials. And if there's not something on the account called multi-factor authentication, which is simply like, if many of us have probably used this, where you either get a text message on your phone, that's my dog, um, and I won't say his name because that's bad guys use that stuff too. So they'll get the username and password, and then they'll go to log in. Normally what you want is multi-factor authentication, which is either like an app from Google or Microsoft. There's many companies that do this, and it gives you a timed code as a third piece of information. So I could have your username, your password. I go to log in, but it asked me for this code from
Mm.
the MFA, multi-factor authentication app. Usually they don't have that on the account. And then what it does is it makes it very easy for the bad person to get in the account. And then what they'll usually do is they'll hide. So let's say it's a CFO that they take over. You don't see that they're in your account, but they're watching all the emails and seeing interactions. And one example of an account takeover that was recent is I received a phone call from a business owner in New York City that has many companies in their portfolio. And they said, "Hey, I think someone just stole a lot of money from one of the companies. Can you get on with the head of IT for that company and see if you can help us?" So I
Wow.
did the diagnostic call with them. And what happened is a little over $700,000 was stolen from an account takeover attack. And it was really horrible because essentially the attacker sat inside the email for a very long time, like several months, and they watched what was going on, and they noticed that a big enterprise company sale was about to happen.
Mm.
So they waited, and just before the potential customer, was ready to buy, they essentially started to hide the thread from the actual VP of sales. And they then sent to the potential customer, "Oh, we need you to actually wire that money
Mm.
to this account," which was a malicious account. And they ended up taking over $700,000. And the client thought that the sale went through. They were waiting and waiting and waiting. And 2 to 3 days later, they said, "Hey, we never received a call or kind of any order confirmation from you. We'd like to just know what's going on." And the VP of sales says, "I never asked you for the order yet. I know we've been talking about it. Who did you pay to?" And they told. And then once started doing forensics inside the account, they could see like these rules had been set up and everything was hidden. And essentially, just from not having multi-factor authentication on the email account, someone was able to get in there and trick a potential client to send money to the wrong destination. And I don't believe, to the best of my knowledge, that they ever recovered that money. And that's a very common problem, to our point earlier. That essentially can put someone right out of business, especially at those dollar amounts. And kind of taking a step back from the account takeover issue again, if they probably had like a strong multi-factor authentication on the account, it would have made it very hard for someone to get in, where they would have moved on likely to another target, because it's just too hard for them
Yeah.
to compromise at that level.
So the account that got taken over was the email accounts. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the corporate email account.
So that they can insert themselves into this email chain.
They start acting as if they were the VP of sales in this.
Right.
And then hiding all of those reply threads and everything from the actual person.
Oh my gosh.
They set up rules.
You didn't let us get very far before I got to share my client's story. So we're keeping it nameless, but it is in this exact vein. So it's very similar. She's an interior designer. She had a huge furniture order. Someone got into her email system, changed an I to an L, masked it so that it looked like it was coming from the vendor. Same thing when they went back. I can barely get through the stories.
No, I know. It's horrible. I have so many of these.
When they went back, they realized that they were in there for a long time. Same thing, watching the chains go back and forth. They sent an email with wire instructions, which of course was not to the vendor. Her mom helps in the business, went to the bank and said, I need to do this wire. Here's the wiring instructions. It got flagged. And so they call and they confirm with my client, hey, we have so-and-so here trying to do a wire transfer. Are you sure? And my client's like, yes, I'm sure. It's for a large furniture order. It was like $20K plus. It's been a couple years, so I don't have the details.
Sure.
So the bank sends it through. Same thing. The vendor's like, hey, tap, tap, tap. We've never got your payment. We can't ship the furniture. And she's like, what are you talking about? They go back and they find out that someone inserted and just changed the email to look very, very similar.
Yep.
And so it was part the social engineering part of like they were acting like somebody else, but they did get into the system.
Wow.
And so it wasn't she was scammed, but it was a vendor that got hacked.
Right.
Never got her money back.
That's what happens the majority of the time, and kind of going back to that 80% of attacks falling into just 3 types of things. That's why the account takeovers are so ruthless and damaging. But many of the times, people don't have multi-factor authentication. It makes it easy for a bad guy to just come in there and start doing these things. And they're very, very clever and very convincing. And then also like the spoofing of the email address, that's a very common thing. We'll see it in many ways where people are just harvesting, like trying to get your username and password. Yeah. They'll copy an entire website and make it with it's just one character off, and it could look like LinkedIn, for example. We saw this case many years ago. Comes up and it looks like the login screen. It says, oh, please enter your username and password. Well, some people may think, what's someone going to do on LinkedIn? Well, what if you use that username and password somewhere else? And they start moving through those other accounts laterally, and they're able to get into something that's damaging. And even LinkedIn itself could be damaging. They could be saying all kinds of nonsense out there and damage your business's reputation, or going into Messenger and asking people, hey, I got this great investment in Bitcoin. It's only 15 grand, which I've seen this happen. Do you want to invest? And most people will say, hey, I know this is not you. And they'll start texting you and calling you or whatever. But some people will fall for it because of the context and the trust of the relationship. And that's why, really making sure our accounts are as secure as they possibly can be, and just making it really difficult for someone to get in. And then to the point of the wire stuff is to have a second step there where you have an outside, like let's say we're working an email. Yep. You have a phone verification to call them, go into the branch, go see them. Hey, you sure this is really you? And I like to follow kind of a framework for that as well, which is ask yourself, if I lose this, can I tolerate that loss? Am I willing to? Yeah. If I'm not, then I better verify.
So just to be super clear, because, when this happened, obviously this isn't my specialty. It was horrifying. She didn't get her money back.
And most of us, it isn't ours, right? It happens.
So to be clear, like what we can learn from her experience and what she can do differently next time is that when you receive a request for a wire and it's being built on the trust, right? There's all these email conversations. It's a vendor she's used for a long time. Right. Is to call and talk to somebody that at at the place and say,
Yeah,
I need
step
to,
out of the chain that you're in, the communication channel you're in, especially if it's email or text or something like that.
and I need
And
to verify wire instructions. Like
yes,
I just want to just like really like put a pin, like highlight this, because this is one clear actionable that can now be implemented in your businesses to say, over
yes,
this threshold, we do not wire funds or send it via Zelle or do a bank transfer or
right.
any of these ways without a second verification
Yes,
of
that's
account
right.
numbers, that they requested it, that the email came from them.
Yep. Yeah, I've even told people, like, for example, it was their bank, and I said, go into the local branch,
Mm,
go right in if you can. Can you? Oh yeah, it's only 2 miles from my house. Go to local
right.
branch, sit down with them, make sure that it's indeed. And again, like if you can't afford or can't tolerate the loss, a little verification, just a little bit of
Right.
effort goes a long way. But what we also see, like especially in larger companies where this stuff happens multiple times a day like crazy, I usually get a complaint, oh, that's going to slow us down. I'm like, well, that's for you to tolerate. If
Right.
it's okay for you to lose that, then that's your decision. I'm just saying, what's your risk tolerance? I would love it if everyone would verify everything, because that's what the bad guys do. They take advantage, knowing that, I don't know if you want to call it laziness, but the avoidance of verification, they'll
Yeah.
take advantage. They know most people won't want to do it,
I mean,
but
it's
it's
exploiting assuming that it's good, right?
yeah,
Like we're thinking it's good. I have this rapport with these people. I've worked with
yeah,
them. Nothing's happened in the past. There's all this
right,
positive proof, but that's what they're leveraging on this one time to be able to take your money. And so
yeah,
yeah,
that,
maybe a little laziness, but also just, thinking it's not going to happen to you. It happens to someone else, and
yeah,
you are the perfect person for them to go after because you're
yeah.
not looking.
They want to take advantage of that,
Yeah.
and that's it's horrifying. I got a contact of mine, is she's a CEO in New York, and she just got very lucky in this kind of scenario where it went the other way, like, whew, finally. But it was pure luck. So I was getting on a plane in Atlanta to fly to San Antonio to speak at a banking conference about fraud, of all things. And it was about 20 minutes until boarding. And I get a call, and I haven't spoken to this person in ages. And I'm like, oh, what's she calling me for? It's been at least a year and a half. I thought just to catch up. And she said, hey, something happened. Can you help me? I said, yeah, I got about 20 minutes. And then in about 2.5 hours or so, I'll be free to talk again. What happened? She said she received a phone call saying that it was from a bank that she had. They knew the account number, they knew all her details and everything.
Yeah.
And they said, look, 14, 15,000 some number had been sent via Zelle into her account, her business account. And they need her to give the username and password and so forth so that they can basically get that money back, because it wasn't intended for her. She
Ugh.
saw it in there and said, hey, what is this? Right. So she gave all the information, but at the last minute, the phone chopped or something, and they didn't get the last digit correctly or whatever the character was for her password, and they couldn't get in. And something in her intuition triggered, and she hung up the phone right away and said, wait a minute, something's up. I need to talk to my bank. So she called her bank, and the bank said, absolutely not. This is not us calling you. We see this money in there. We're going to take care of this for you, because this is like a common scam where they'll get the money from somewhere else, dump it into your account, and then pull it, get you to give it back from your account so that they can,
That
after a
and
hop.
other
Yeah, they,
money so they can use. Yeah,
yeah, they
exactly. Yeah.
keep it. And
Yeah.
she got so lucky that she gave the wrong information, or it didn't get picked up properly.
Right.
So, but then it looked like she was part of more of an organized thing, because she had other banks, and she started to get similar issues with those banks as well. And it became kind of this, for a month or two later, she kept getting these kind of things, but she was pretty aware that they were happening. And she was so happy that that first one wasn't damaging, because she's technically a small business as well.
Right.
And I explained to her, go change all your passwords, go into the bank. Like, do not, when someone calls you with all this urgency is a huge indicator that something's up. And also, most of the time, the organizations won't call you on the phone.
Right.
You're going to get a letter or something like that. So my advice on these kind of things is hang up right away, just like with everything else. Go to a different line of communication and call the bank, for example, or the institution directly. And that's the best approach. Do not give in, no matter how much pressure these people give asking you for your details, because that's a telltale sign of someone trying to scam. They're
Yeah,
always urgent. You got to hurry because of this and that. No, I don't. Hang up.
exactly. Alrighty. And so so we talked about two-factor authentic.
Yep, that's number one for account takeovers.
And
And then, of
so I'll
course,
just say this.
yeah,
I have to remind myself not to be annoyed with the process because it's for a greater good. And I just want to say that for everybody else. I
yeah.
mean, when you talk about like, okay, like it's like troublesome to like make the call and go outside of the primary chain of
Right.
communication. I'm like, for 5 figures, sure. But then I'm like so annoyed every time I have to check my phone and have that
Yeah.
code and get in, and it's slowing you down. And so we just need a new perspective on it. It
Yeah.
has been created because there are so many hacks and challenges that we do need to slow down.
Yeah, it's better to be the guardian of the galaxy than to be the victim, right? So
Exactly. Can I just share? Okay, so what about SIM card swaps?
yeah. Oof. I definitely have another story about that. So I was at are you familiar with a Rotary Club?
Yeah.
It's like an organization, local community, do a lot of good work, usually a lot of business owners. So I was at a local meetup and I was talking to someone, I believe they're in the insurance space. And they came up to me and there was a woman standing with us, speaking with us as well. The three of us were chatting, and then it came out that she had just suffered from a SIM card swap as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they had gotten in, they were, because she had to have multi-factor authentication, but it was with the text message versus the app.
Yep.
So like with the app, you can always go to a different device and, if that happened, you could shut it down. If you not getting your codes via text, but rather through an app, there's still a way to, further protect yourself, even if someone does a SIM swap and takes you over. So she noticed they started getting into her bank account and taking monies. And so it was a very emotional situation, like horrible. And since then, one of the things that we always recommend doing is working with your provider to put a lockdown code, a freeze on the account, and set up those extra measures, just like with everything else, so that it's not super simple for someone that has all your contact information to just verify as you and to swap out your phone.
Yep.
Because once they do that, of course, right, they can call people, they can get your text message codes for your bank login or your email or wherever you're using text-based, SMS-based MFA versus an app.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is even there, it's great to have the freeze and to have the code and all that kind of stuff, but it's also equally good to add that extra layer of protection to try not to use text messaging for your two-factor authentication, your MFA. Use an app. That's one reason why it's better. And then I haven't utilized these, but there are some other services and or phone providers that take measures even way more serious and make it almost near, like nothing's impossible, but super impossible almost to have that SIM swap happen. And it's really this is just my opinion, but the phone providers should be doing one heck of a job to make it near impossible for someone to simply impersonate you with information that they could get from a data leak or something like this. But right now, to the best of my knowledge, most of the big carriers will have a feature where you can put in a code with them and say, freeze the account. And there's no way to make any changes to this account unless you have that code. And you don't use that one thing. Don't use that code anywhere else in life. Make it completely unique.
So I won't name the carrier, but about 18 months to 2 years ago, my phone was SIM swapped. And it was a byproduct of actually my husband's identity being stolen. So my husband had to renew his passport, fills out the application, submits his expiring but not expired passport, puts it in a blue mailbox, right in front of the mailbox office, by the way. And what it came out was they ended up taking it out of there. And we were sitting at dinner one night, like at our dinner table. And my husband starts getting like emails of like some weird stuff going on. And he's like, I think my identity was stolen. And as we're trying to like piece it together, little pieces, my phone gets disconnected. Like I can't use my phone.
Yeah, it just goes.
And just to shorten the story, what happened was on the application, he mistakenly, our numbers are 2 numbers off, but because he's always calling me, he didn't put his number, he put my phone number. And had they had his phone number, so it was a 2-digit swap number on the application, they were, because then, I'm sorry. Let me back up. See, I even told the story wrong. I didn't get shut off. I started getting all these text messages on his accounts, which was the 2FA coming in. And so he's getting emails because it was his email address. I start getting all these text messages on accounts that are not mine, that are his, and then off, done. So we had it locked. We had it locked for other reasons. We knew that it was an issue or could be an issue. Yeah. And so they did social engineering, whatever they told the phone company, impersonating me. They didn't have my codes. They were able to swap it.
Yep.
And I mean, this went as far as they went into a physical bank on camera with the passport and cleaned out bank accounts, acting like they were my husband.
Wow.
Nobody really cared. The banks were like, all right, well, yep, that's not you. This is you. And they treated us like we were the ones doing something wrong when we're like, who's on the camera? What are you going to do? Like, can we file a police report? Like, we wanted to pursue this. They had all this evidence. And this happened so often, even though it was completely disruptive to our lives, they didn't really actually care. Because to them, it wasn't that big of a deal. For us, we're like, and when does the money get returned? Like, what is that process? Because we just got cleaned out of somebody standing in your branch with a passport that was stolen. And it could have been worse. That's the point of the whole story. He not
and it started with that
my
physical
phone number.
Yeah. See,
and when we started
just a physical taking of the package that you put into the postal box, correct?
Right. And Jeremiah, if he hadn't put my phone number...
I would bet you weren't the only ones.
We were not, and it was a team. There is no way. How fast emails were coming in and how fast text messages were coming in for codes, like it was almost like they had a team of people that got the information and they were scattering to go as far and fast as they could before everything got shut down.
Correct. Yeah, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah. So protect your phones, because if you literally can't dial out, like you can't call, you have no service at all now.
Yeah. And your family, kids, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go into the, like a main corporate branch. I would recommend this, just my personal preference, to the phone provider, and, not like a smaller one. Go to like whatever the biggest office is that's close.
Yep.
And have that set up and have them explain to you how they'll prevent it.
Yep.
And if you don't feel confident with that, then go to another location, talk to somebody else to get it repaired. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. So that started with a physical. That was what we would call a physical crime.
So when the person came back for the third time to the bank, and this was after we've told them that this is not my husband, they confiscated the passport, but let him walk away. Right? Yeah. So my husband ended up getting his passport back, right, to renew and all of this. But it was because he was so confident and just kept going back into the branch. And by this time, we had already been there to say, whoever's coming in is not me, my husband.
Right.
And so that happened on a personal level, but it could have happened on a business. It could have happened. It could happen on a personal level. And because we're small business owners, it affects your business.
Yeah, it's all related.
All intertwined.
Right. That's one thing. And I'm keeping an eye on our time as well, because I would like to make sure that I'm as helpful as possible. And I'll cover the last bits that remain of the 80%. So basically with that, we covered account takeovers, which includes a phone, whatever, your account that you don't want someone to have access to. Lock your phone, have multi-factor authentication, freeze your credit filings with the 3 credit bureaus. Make sure that, that's locked down with a code as well. What we're really doing is reducing what we call the attack surface. You want to reduce the footprint.
And for a lot of credit bureaus, that's free, correct?
Yep.
And they have mandatory. A really easy way to do it. I mean, within minutes, because it sounds like call the credit bureaus. What a drag. Right. I'm telling you, it's not that hard. And if you get the app, you can lock and unlock it yourself.
Yep, exactly. So that will help with all the account takeover things, multi-factor authentication like Google Authenticator, Microsoft has a product. A lot of companies use other businesses like Okta, and there's many different platforms, but the key is that it's an app on the phone and or device. And then to our point, it all ties into each other. So number two, that the cyber insurance folks said that make up the 80%. Usually when account takeover happens, that leads to fund transfer fraud, like the wire fraud stuff that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So it's first the account takeover, then that turns into fund transfer fraud. And again, if we make sure that we have verification outside of the communication channel that you're using, just verify before sending any amounts of money. And then the last bit is ransomware. So that covers 80%. Ransomware is essentially where some malicious code, usually someone will click on a link in an email and or a text message, and that is embedded with malicious code that freezes and locks down all of the systems, a computer system, and they're asking usually for some form of money. Usually it'll be, in my experience, like Bitcoin or something like that, to unlock so that you can use your systems again. Now, there's a lot of problems with this because even if you do give the money, they could come back later, or they might just take your money and not do anything.
Right.
So prevention is extremely important. And one of the best things that we can do is, if you're using, some form of email and system and so forth in your small business, back up everything and keep it off the internet. So maybe it's like on a drive or somewhere separated from the internet, and do it regularly enough so that, let's say you do get compromised, you can at least say, okay, I don't have to pay that. And then I'll just have my team and or an outside consultant restore everything for me.
Yeah.
So that that's like the best case scenario. Now, that being said, depending on the size of the organization, they'll usually have email filtering and anti-ransomware detection and all this kind of stuff on the email platform. And I know like Google Workspace and Microsoft and these guys try to do a really good job at it for us. But having a backup of all your critical stuff that is encrypted, and you know that you can restore it and get back up and running within a reasonable period of time, is probably one of the best things that you can do for your business, because I have received those phone calls, and without going long on the story, it's simply they got locked down with ransomware. Did you have backups? No. Did you have a way to restore? No. And then they asked me, can you help me get some of that 500K Bitcoin? Do you have any to sell me?
Oh my
No, I don't.
goodness. Yeah.
I don't. Boom, they hung up the phone. So you just want to do the simple things to kind of keep yourself from being in those, damaging positions. And then the last 20% is an assortment of things. So it's kind of like the physical thing that you mentioned there with theft. Keep your files all chopped up, and don't make it easy for someone to go snooping even through your garbage bins or whatever it may be. You might think it's safe just because you threw it in the trash. If you have something of value, they'll go snooping through that stuff if you've been targeted. Then there's breaches and all these, different things. It's an assortment of things that fall into that.
This
20%.
is where their creativity, as creative as they can be, there's probably a way to get scammed. Yeah.
Right. But the biggest things that we see are always like the account takeover that leads to some kind of fund transfer fraud. Then there's the ransomware attacks, and then it's social engineering, just trickery over the phone, over texting, email, and then there's extortion scams. So be very aware of this. This is some newer stuff.
Yeah.
We all hear about AI. A friend of mine who's a CTO for a company has about 300 employees that he's managing. He, smart guy, went to visit his mother with his son, and mom received a phone call and she looked horrified, and she hung up the phone, and my friend asked his mother what happened, what was that all about. And she said, I received a call, and it was my grandson's voice saying that he was in a jail in South America, and I needed to hurry up and wire him $15,000 or they weren't going to let him out. So please Venmo or whatever the mechanism was. But luckily, she got very lucky. Grandson's sitting right there next to her. So she knew it wasn't him, but imagine.
Oh my gosh.
Let's just say they know the context, like grandson had been traveling.
Right.
She would have likely instantly asked how to, or did it herself or whatever, followed the instructions. So there's a lot of stuff like that. And that was AI taking a few seconds of his voice from some online video, and then tricking grandmother, trying to trick grandmother into partaking. So again, verify. Like one of the things we like to teach is, when speaking to audiences, is educate your family, educate your staff, and have like a code word or phrase that only they would know.
Yeah.
to ask the person, hey, can you tell me what our phrase is? And if they don't know it, then you know that it's not, that it's not them. It's one way to kind of verify the
I
situation.
love that simple, actionable. I have a phrase with my own child, right?
Good.
My mom had one with me, and that is like a part of our lives, but I've never
Yeah.
thought about having it with your team members. That's incredibly that anyone can take that action.
Yeah, because they'll scam. They can pretend to be your CEO.
Right.
So that's another thing that happened. Just sharing the stories to help folks know what's going on out there. Gift card scam. So CEO in New York, he has many companies. During lunchtime, one of the CEOs of one of the companies under the umbrella, they were getting text messages saying, "Hey," or no, rather it was an email. So they'd spoofed the email, sent the email saying, "Hey, I'm at lunch with a very important client. Can you go get two $500 gift cards? Scratch off the stuff, give me all the number and then the code. I want to give that to this person as a thank you because we're trying to get this deal through." Well, the person went, bought the first $500 card, gave it to the person, and then they came when again and asked for that second one. She said, "You know what? Let me run upstairs real quick and see if it was actually him." And I said, "Hey, you asking me to do this?" He's like, "That's not me. Well,
Oh
don't do that. Don't
my
send those.
gosh.
What's going on?" So again, it's that trickery. Be very aware that anytime someone asks you for something, it's good to really just be super, super cautious and verify. Luckily, this was a few $100s, but like
Right.
imagine if it was a super sizable amount. But yeah, there are very simple measures, and always be on the watch out, and don't
Always.
fall into. You'd mentioned in the beginning of the call, it's been the most painful thing for me in this entire career of mine is hearing people say, "But I'm not a target."
Mm.
It's indiscriminate. They're going to cast wide nets, try to find anything they can. And then if you get targeted, they're really going to come after you that way as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Man, I didn't realize I had so much encounter with scams.
Yeah, you
Really quick,
did.
again,
Oh,
my husband and I went to Target, bought my son a gift card, came to the counter with the gift card. The cashier goes, we've been having a lot of fraud. Let me give you, this one doesn't look right. The text looks
okay.
different. And we're like, oh, thank you so much.
Wow.
Pulls a gift card out from underneath, sells it to us, cleaned out. Like
It's
the
gone.
cashier was in on it. They have
Yeah.
it was a whole investigation. I had everything. Like I'm like, no. Like I didn't buy this for myself and just give it away.
Yeah.
It's for my child. I know it wasn't used. And we
Wow.
started looking into it, and it was like an inside scam, but they played on, let me protect you. This one
Yeah.
looks a little weird that you came up with. Let me give you this other one I have from under the cash register.
Yeah. And you're like, you work here. So the
Right, of
context
course.
was that they were a trusted source.
And I'll just say, since I mentioned Target, they took complete care of it. The process was easy. My son got his birthday gift, all
Great.
was fine. But it's everywhere. And I hate that we have to look, but we do have to look. And
Yeah.
you mentioned something a couple times, and so I think this will be a great way to wrap it all up. Is that in many of your stories, you said they had a gut check. It
Yeah.
was the glitch on the phone, one number. It was the first gift card of 500, and then the second. Is that there is so many actionable ways that we can be preventative. But
Hmm.
man, my message is always trust your gut.
Absolutely. There's a great book called Gift of Fear. It was written many years ago, and it was from a person whose job was to protect celebrities, ultra high net worth people, government officials. And he said something in the book that really stood out to me when I read it. And it is that your intuition, your gut feel, is not designed to harm you, it's designed to protect you. And it's best to listen to that and second check everything. The minute that happens, don't ignore it, because a
Mm,
lot of us will ignore it thinking, oh, I'm overreacting, or they try to hustle us along and give all this urgency. No.
yeah,
There's something going on in the atmospheric conditions that are triggering that we've evolved to this state to have that gut feel, to have that intuition. And it's really wise to listen to it because, again, is it worth losing just to satisfy someone that's trying to hustle us along? I
right.
don't think so. I think we really need that should be your stop sign symbol once you feel that.
Absolutely. I've heard that's a
Mhm.
great book. My husband read it and my son read it on
No kidding.
Audible. Yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. It's
Yep,
I
Gavin DeBecker.
Yeah, that is a great book about, just really turning something that is considered negative, like hacking, on the
Yeah.
positive. We're all going to be about positive, even if sometimes things are really negative,
Yep.
and how to make them work for you. So, all right, we open this up that you have a book, but
Mhm.
like, how can people find out more about the work that you're doing, about your
Sure.
book, connect with you? I'm sure a lot of these stories have hit home, and people want to dig in and
Yeah.
more actionables to protect themselves.
Yeah. I mean, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I love the platform, and it can, chat in the messenger if you have questions or anything like that. But I think that's probably the simplest way to connect and for me to be helpful.
So if you are really interested, make sure you connect with him on LinkedIn, ask him about his book. I'm sure it's got some great stories that go deeper than today's conversation. I feel like I blinked my eye. I'm so glad that you were watching the time. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I have loved having you listen to this episode of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. And I sure hope you found the conversation with Jeremiah Baker to be valuable. But I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So, based on today's episode, man, he shared some real practical tips. And my ask of you is to open your eyes, be vigilant, keep this top of mind. These scams and frauds and cyber attacks are everywhere. And the thing that I walked away from this episode from myself was to have a conversation with my team. I was aware of it. I actually think of this stuff all the time. I've personally been affected. My husband's been affected. This is something I keep top of mind. And I took it for granted thinking, yeah, doesn't everybody keep it top of mind? That is not true. So to protect my business, I really needed to keep my team vigilant about this and give them best practices, because one little text change in an email with someone that you think you're going back and forth with, and then suddenly the email changes, man, that is so easy to happen. And we're moving fast, and we think we're in conversation with people we've already been in conversation with. This is just one example that an L is changed to an I in the email. Of course, these are not always able to be caught, but I think having an awareness and being vigilant about protecting your company is required. I think this is a great topic for a team meeting, is that at the end of the meeting or somewhere on the agenda, you're just sharing some information and asking your team to keep their eyes open as these scams, frauds, and cyber attacks are on the rise. And before we close out, I want to invite you to take action in scheduling a discovery call. If you are looking to work with a business coach that can help you navigate business strategies, leading your team, being more productive, effective business systems, to name a few, then I invite you to learn more about my coaching program at amberdelagarza.com/coaching and schedule a discovery call today to find out what working together might look like for you and your business, and if that is the next right step. And if you are new here, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And if you found today's episode to be valuable, be sure to share it with another business owner friend. Share the link, send an email, send a text message, let them know that you found value in today's episode and you think they would too. So that's my straight talk for you today. Until next time, have a productive week.